Welcome to the Tech and Real Estate channel, where we bridge the gap between real estate and technology. Today, we are discussing how prop tech company Parasphere is revolutionizing real estate. My name is Ariel Herrera, your host and data scientist. Join me in my discussion with Evan Robinson, CEO of Parasphere, as he discusses the origins of real estate tech company and his vision behind it. With a background in politics and consulting, Evan stumbled upon the idea of creating a platform that would disrupt the real estate industry. Perisphere aims to tackle the issue of unaffordability in the market by empowering consumers and cutting out unnecessary costs. Through the use of advanced technology like computer vision and AI, Parasphere is rethinking the entire home buying and selling process. Stay tuned for the release of their innovative product and be part of the revolution. Welcome to the show, Evan. Super excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. Very excited to be here. Love to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm one of the co-founders here at Perisphere. My background, I actually got my start, believe it or not, working in politics, but that's where I first fell in love with real estate, which is going to be the conversation of today, where I worked at Los Angeles City Hall for Councilmember Correct and helped out on the zoning committee, worked in that for a couple of years. After that, I actually jumped over to the business world working at a great company called MediaLink, where I worked across their growth strategy as well as their agency optimization clients.
Excellent. Excellent background. So yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that transition that you had into real estate and ultimately why you would decide to create a new company.
Yeah, actually, kind of a funny story. So when I was working at MediaLink, you're working in consulting, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, and you start earning some money, start saving up that bank account. I wanted to figure out a way to kind of put that money into something more useful, something that would have a little bit more return than just sitting there. So I actually approached Jackson for an investment opportunity out in North Jersey. We were kind of sourcing properties, looking around, seeing what we could do to kind of come together on an opportunity. And we built out a couple of early models to kind of predict which neighborhood was going to have the best alpha and get the highest return. If you know North Jersey, it's a very competitive market, so very important there. Jackson then introduced me to his friend Ilya, who's just like a math genius, who you actually talked to before, and he double checked our models and we actually landed on a property, 47 Washburn. But we actually didn't invest in that because Ilya was like, "Hey, this is a really interesting idea. What can you do in the built environment, utilizing AI and modeling and actually doing something much bigger than just personal return?" And he said, "Let's focus in on that. Let's all quit our jobs and focus in on that." And that was the early days of Perisphere, which we spun out of control, and now we're tackling a much bigger issue. But that was the origins.
Incredible. So it was just solving a problem for yourself, gathering data,
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand how do I increase my personal returns. And then from that, building a small team and deciding, you know what, we could just take this to a whole other level.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the problem we're exactly solving, which largely actually stems from one of our co-founders, Jackson Ryder, who is a former realtor at one point, is actually it's corruption. Corruption within the real estate industry is what we're solving. Homes are less affordable than ever before, and our solution is to tackle that unaffordability from the transaction level and really dive in and see where we can find cost savings and efficiencies and put the power back in the hands of these consumers that are really struggling out there.
Yeah, it's very difficult today. A lot of people who normally could get a first time like home can't afford that
Mm-hmm.
today on regular wages. It's pretty incredible. But with that, would love to hear a little bit more you detailing how Parasphere is kind of changing the landscape in this space.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, we're in an interesting time where the NAR lawsuits came out, which basically proved that commissions were largely being fixed by the NAR and the largest brokerages out there from the both buy side and sell side, as well as a lot of other implications. With the emergence of this new technology of like artificial intelligence being integrated into everybody's day-to-day life, as well as a large growing consumer distrust in the marketplace. And we saw this as a very unique opportunity that really only came up in the past couple of months to really go in and disrupt the market. And our solution to solve that is it's a three-phase plan. The first phase, which is being rolled out in the new year, is actually building out a listing technology where all someone has to do is pull their phone out and start scanning their home. From there, we overlay the computer vision to extract all the different price drivers within the home, and then we couple that with the rest of real estate data out there. So what does that do? Well, that gives you marketing materials, the valuations, the data and insights, everything and more that you would need to confidently list and sell your home. Phase two of this is actually facilitating the transaction in one platform where we're going to start pulling in the buy side and connecting the sell side to really streamline that process. And then phase three is the integration of everything else that goes into that transaction. Think like escrow, insurance,
Wow.
everything from there. So that's the big vision for Perisphere. It's just one unified ecosystem, so streamlined, all the inefficiencies cut out, as much cost savings as possible, really putting the power back in the buyers and sellers' hands.
Excellent. Yeah, I could see how that would add tremendous amount of value. And if you could just detail a little bit more about what are some of these inefficiencies that maybe home buyers don't realize today that they do
Mm-hmm.
face and that can impede them from selling or purchasing a property?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll dive into the technology that we're putting out, in the new year by the end of Q1, and largely in the listing process. So typically, what happens today is if you're on the sell side, you get a broker to represent you in the house selling process, and then they go through and they spend a couple of weeks kind of detailing out the house. They get it up on the MLS. They do all this different stuff. On the buy side, it's basically you going to the things that exist out there, so like Zillow, Redfin, whatever, looking for all the existing listings out there, and you end up sending them to your broker anyways. And they basically facilitate the conversation, and they're kind of representing you in that process. Now that's a very inefficient and expensive process in terms of on the sell side, you're going to end up paying both the sell side and the buy side commission, which is coming out to 6%, and that is changing a little bit with the NAR lawsuits, where the buy side is going to have to start paying, incurring some of that cost. But we'll see how that actually rolls out when the final rulings actually hit. But that doesn't need to be that way. It's our thesis that, hey, people can just interact. They already do interact anyways. They can facilitate sales. You see it all the time in the car market.
Wow.
Robinhood did a great job with cutting out the stockbrokers. So we're kind of aligning ourselves with that and allowing people to just sell their house, like make it as simple as possible and not have to go through a million different steps, which is intentionally introduced and intentionally complex. That was a buildup over the past 100 years or so in the industry.
Yeah, it's pretty challenging to like wrap your head around sometimes where it's like, why
Yeah.
is someone paying a certain percentage for maybe like a standard house that's being bought or sold when they're usually like the buyer's usually the one that sends all the links anyway to their agent. And then for the most part, besides the negotiation, there isn't like so much value, I feel like, at least
Mm-hmm.
being added today for like regular type of homes. Maybe for luxury, it's completely different. So I could see the need to kind of cut that middleman.
Absolutely. And you actually touched on a good point, right? We're working, if you think about it as a standard distribution, we're working in the middle of that bell curve for the most of the transactions out there. Obviously, on the luxury side, it's more about buying the story of the home than an actual price, or, you know, it's more about buying the story of the home than anything else. And wherever we can truly allow people just to facilitate that conversation, and giving them the tools and most importantly the infrastructure around how do you actually go about this. There is an education gap that we're working through with net new users. However, 11% of the market already does this, and their biggest concerns are, how do we get to the right valuation? How do we market this thing? These aren't experts, but they're people that don't want to incur the cost and don't want to deal with these intentionally complex systems.
Exactly. And going towards, you kind of mentioned it briefly about the technology that you use and how someone
Mm-hmm.
would be able to walk through phase one, use your app to record their property, automatically apply computer vision to assess what price points are effective in the house. What other ways are you leveraging technology?
Yeah, so that's actually a very interesting question. So obviously on phase one, it's going to be utilization of the computer vision, and then also utilizing GAN models and things like that to enhance the imagery, so it's looks professional, so you can list it out there, generating all the marketing copy
Wow.
with the LLM models and everything like that. And then as we go into phase two, it's going to be then building out a curated buyer experience, where we're going to be able to, just that simple Q&A question in the beginning. Hey, let's narrow down what your taste is, what neighborhoods you like, what personality of the neighborhood that you like, and really curate that experience. And as you're going through the listings, narrowing down that list. Now, some interesting things that we are in the exploratory phase for, but I'm very excited to dive in and actually integrate into it. Is, for example, scraping some of these local forums and understanding the personality of the neighborhood, as
Mhm.
if like as if it was an agent that's been there for 50 plus years and has talked to everybody. We're going to be able to mimic that part of the brain and really facilitate that aspect for the consumer, so they're not missing a beat in that experience.
Amazing. It's really incredible just from like reading a Reddit forum, for example, about a particular
Mhm.
city, like how much information you're able to like assess. Even when I go to visit
Right.
cities just for like a weekend, I'll do that and have like a good idea of like what type of food I want to go after, what activities, just by looking at forums.
Yeah, it's very important, and actually, that's like a big part of people's buying experience within real estate. Is, hey, how am I going to like the people that I live next to? Is this
Yeah.
going to be? It's so important for people looking for new areas, especially if they're moving out of state into a new state or in a different part of a state, right? So that is going to be a very important aspect of that curated experience, which a lot of people like.
Yeah, I love that you're hitting that because that's one of the major focal points of the anxiousness someone will have when making this purchase. And you can't tell that just by looking at data points of price, bedrooms, square footage, right? So the fact that you guys are leveraging external data sources as well, is really amazing. And what are some of the things that you're like most excited about when you released your first version coming into 2024?
Yeah, the thing I'm most excited about is rethinking a system, right? That's the companies say that all the time, like, oh, we're rethinking this, we're going to
Yeah.
change the world, right? But honestly, what we're doing at Perisphere is so important, where we're tackling the core of a lot of issues for Americans, which is like the staple of what it means, which is home ownership, that white picket fence with that house. How do we get back to that vision? Because that's what a lot of people think about. And I'm very excited, even if it's in the early days, and it's going to take. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to take some time to actually fully rethink this whole industry and make it in favor of the consumer. But I'm happy that I'm very excited to be tackling that from the get go and releasing a product that has so much impact and power that's going to really from the start completely change the system, and by making these a lot of these brokerages antiquated in the process.
Yeah, definitely. And how localized do you plan to be? So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
say if as you're starting to understand the consumer, their behavior, if they currently live in North Jersey, but there's maybe a neighborhood in Pennsylvania that could kind of fit their profile as well, do you plan to like also provide that type of information or keep it just local to maybe a 5 mile radius where they live?
Yeah, so the technology, it's going to work across the US. We trained it on basically the entire United States. However, in terms of our targeting strategy, each state has its own unique personality and legal system, and that change. And when you're talking about real estate, it's one of the most highly regulated industries in the world. So we're taking a state by state approach. So we will be tackling one state at a time, really building out the technology there, making sure that it's addressing exactly the issues and the needs of that end user, and then we'll move on to the next state and start tackling that. And it's going to be a process over the course of a couple of years to really tackle everything, but we'll be able to start integrating in the exchange in phase two before we even tackle the whole US.
Excellent. I was talking to Ilya about that in our last conversation of how important it is to be really good at like a niche or particular
Mm-hmm.
location than trying to just go wide. Like, at least from my perspective, working with different data sources, I've seen those that, tout national coverage. But like when you actually try to analyze deals within particular markets in their system, they're not good. So I think it's great to start local.
Yeah, my business philosophy, and my team's going to laugh because I say this almost every day. I call it the end of a pin needle. What's the smallest point, whether it's coming from technology all the way down to, basically who's your target market, your beachhead market? What's the smallest demographic that we can hit, or what's the simplest issue that we can solve today, right? Simplicity in just the build process to marketing to talking to the end user. It just needs to be there. That's how you that's how you build a successful product. That's how you
Yeah,
evangelize a community, is you make it simple enough for everybody to feel included and can use.
completely agree with that. And want to understand a little bit more. So, did you think one day you'd be a CEO of a real estate tech-based company? And um, if so, how did you lay out that plan? And if not, like what has surprised you thus far?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I thought I was gonna go into politics and be the next JFK, but I mean, I might have the hair, but I'm not necessarily there, right? So,
Yeah.
so the path I kind of took to deciding to get into the startup world is totally by accident. Actually, I got out of college. I worked in politics. I jumped on a couple of campaigns. I was very excited about that. I saw a lot of issues. I talked to a lot of people, in the community, in the North Jersey community, actually, where I really dove in. North Jersey and Los Angeles, which was where I'm from originally. Uh, and I started hearing about a lot of issues that people are having, and I started writing down. I have a little black notepad. Start writing down. I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting. This is interesting, but a lot of this could be solved by private market solutions. And it was at that point I decided, hey, I don't know a whole lot about business, but let me just find a job that exposes me to the whole gamut of the business world. And the best consultants have their reputation, but the best way to see the entire business world and understand from a problem solution perspective how do you approach everything is to go in that. MediaLink really offered me that opportunity where I went in and I saw, working with the biggest companies out there, seeing where they were falling short and how we could solve them, and applying that mindset to things that I just have approached in life, and really diving into that. So, like I mentioned before, it just so happened that I wanted to just get an investment under my belt. And we stumbled into this idea by exploring the map and the data and really seeing where that led us. But in terms of like where we decided, hey, we need to just really build out Perisphere, was a conversation between Jackson, Ilya, and I, where we're like, okay, let's just talk to as many real estate brokers and agents as we can. Let's talk to their clients, right, the consumer side, and see where the pain points are. And we were originally actually kicking this off. We started to build this for agents, but then we recognized where the bigger pain was, which was a drop underneath them, which was their clients, and saying, hey,
Yeah.
these are the people that are kind of the ones that are taking the grunt of the hit, right? They're the one that's giving up their equity to pay these commission rates, and or on the other side, the buy side, can't even find a house that they can afford or think to live in. And that's where I said, okay, let's just go full bore on this. Let's tackle this issue. And that's how I stumbled into the startup world. I never thought I was going to be in it. I always thought I was going to be in politics, but when something's so important, you have to make adjustments in your life.
Definitely. Love the passion you have behind it, as well as how um, you are able to tap into like what people really need at all different levels. I think your political background in that sense and consulting has also really helped there. And for someone who maybe has a dream of creating their own startup in the future, what are some like tidbits you provide for them to get started?
Yeah. So I'm gonna steal this from my uncle, who in his own right, he's got a couple startups and is in the legal world as well. But one of the things he told me when I first started out at MediaLink was always assume that the room is smarter than you and you can take something away from them, right? It's all about what can you take away from that room? What can you learn from people? And just start building up that knowledge base before you even start thinking about doing something else. And then the second thing is network, right? Everything is about network. It's all about, I'm gonna steal another word from him, but it's all about the room that you're in and how do you get into that room? How do you get to know the people that you need to know to make yourself successful? Because if you're going about it with no network, no nothing, and not knowing a whole lot of people, you're fighting an uphill battle. So it's all about diving in and really, really spending the time and building out the genuine relationships that are needed to be successful. And the second thing is have a problem solution mindset. Look at the world. You don't have to solve every problem that's out there, but look at the world and start thinking about, okay, I walked into here, I saw this was an issue. How would I solve that? And start playing that mental game with you. And eventually you're going to land on a good idea And then you just got to, go for it. You just have to dive in and tackle the issue and just put everything you have behind it, despite what it, you know, despite what the feelings are or whatever it is. It's going to be an emotional roller coaster. You just have to go for it.
Great pieces of advice, Evan. And for those that want to check out Parasphere as well as follow you in the company's journey, how would they do so?
Yeah. So easy. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and everything. We're just Perisphere, so you can Google us and find us there. In terms of signing up for the wait list, which we will be releasing our product by the end of Q1 next year, uh, go to perisphere.io and there's a waitlist sign up form there. There is a link to be able to share that out. The more people that you share it to, the higher up you'll move on that list, and the people that are the highest on the list will actually get early access and be a part of our test group and get to build the product with us.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, Evan. I'm actually on the wait list. Can't wait till the product is
Perfect.
released.